Yes, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Simon Tutman. Welcome to Law Chat, March 2023 edition, brought to you in conjunction with Moore Markham's accountants and business advisors specializing in financial services to the legal profession. And it's my great pleasure today to welcome all the way from Brisbane, Australia, Clarissa Rayward. Clarissa is a mum of two daughters. She's a wife. She's a divorce lawyer. She's the director of the Brisbane Family Law Centre, which she established in 2008. She's an author. She's an active podcaster. She's a happiness advocate. And amongst her books, she's also written Happy Lawyer, Happy Life. Clarissa, welcome. Happy Lawyer, Happy Life. It sounds that's a bit of an oxymoron, but perhaps my statement is a bit of a cliche. But look, welcome to Law Chat. Thanks for joining us here. You've been an advocate for many years to help lawyers reduce anxiety, depression, and psychological ill health in the profession. And I'll come to that in a minute. Today's session was titled Burning Burnout, which I think is of concern to obviously quite a few lawyers. But I wonder if we could get your story a little bit, how you got into law, why you got into law, and how it was that you came about to start the Brisbane Family Law Centre in 2008.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me, Simon. I mentioned to you when you were organising this that you've had a bit of an impact on me in terms of the direction that my life went, and that was part of what led to me starting this firm was your book, Why Lawyers Should Eat Bananas. But I'll go back before that. How did I become a lawyer? I'm still trying to work that out 20 years later, to be frank with you. I grew up in northern New South Wales over here in Australia, had a really, kind and calm and fun childhood, nothing exciting, did well at school, went off and started a design degree. I was going to be an interior designer. A year and a half into that, left, was a bit lost, decided to hunt for something that I perceived would be the opposite of design school, which I at that point felt was very airy-fairy. So I'll go to law because it's very certain. Studied law, discovered it's not certain at all. And have then spent 20 years really still trying to work out how it is that I became a lawyer, because I'm a very creative person. I love creativity. I love colour. And a lot of that isn't always obvious, I think, in terms of the practice and the lifestyle that comes with life as a lawyer. I fast opened my own business because it's what's enabled me to have the creativity. I love business. I love entrepreneurialism. I love the ability to look at things and find different ways of doing things. And I was lucky that I started law in a very small law firm. So it was myself, my boss, and a secretary. And the advantage I perceive always of being in tiny law is you just do everything from the beginning. And so the idea of starting my own business wasn't particularly scary to me because I've been in a business and an office where I did everything. So there wasn't this moment of, oh, now I've got to learn how to do the trust account or something like that. That's the joy of small law. And so 15 years later, I still run a law firm. I do mostly enjoy being a lawyer. I can't imagine working for anyone else. I really do enjoy the opportunity to build things and create things and grow things. And it was my own experience of struggling, particularly after I had my first daughter, with life in the law and really not feeling great. And burnout was exactly now, I know with the benefit of hindsight, where I was at. So I was good 10 years in. I'd had a child. I ran a law firm. I didn't have a structure that enabled me to say I've got 12 months maternity leave. I was back in the office really quickly after having a baby. And that wasn't conducive to good mental health. My daughter didn't sleep. My business didn't run in the way that it does now. Just all of those sort of perfect storm moments that really had me in a place that wasn't great. And that's what led me to start digging around, hunting for resources around how can I get out of this hole? Like, I don't want to feel like this.
Yeah.
And the research tells us that these are problems, but what I couldn't find was anything that told me the solution other than just leave law. This is how it is.
Yeah.
And I had a business. It's not as easy as just leave law once you've got a business. So I was really interested in saying, well, I understand the challenges, but what I'm actually interested in is the solution. And that's what I've sort of sat in for the last 10 years, is really focused in on, let's talk about how we change it, not so much on just identifying the problem. We know there's a problem, but how do we change it?
And presumably part of that solution is identifying the causes.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think my observations and research tells me that there are two key areas to look at when it comes at cause. Individuals, us as lawyers, there are a series of traits, behaviours, thinking patterns that naturally lead us to be more vulnerable to some of the psychological conditions that you mentioned earlier. But separate to that, structurally, the way law is set up and operates of itself also leads us to be more vulnerable to some of these things. And I've done a lot of work in the individual space because I think that's the piece we can all control. We can all absolutely change our circumstances as individuals, and I think that's very important. However, genuinely to fix these statistics and genuinely to make the changes that are needed, we have to start looking at the structures, how we do what we do. And COVID has actually just been such a wonderful game changer on this, because things pre-COVID that were nice to have, maybe could, but probably won't, just became normal. And I really feel like we're sitting in a space now where we know we can do things differently. The important part now is to grab that and utilize that for the future and not let that be, oh, but that was COVID. We just stop that now and we return to how it was.
So, with the work that you're doing, apart from the advisory work that you do with couples who may be separating or getting divorced, do you devote a certain amount of time in working with practitioners who themselves are addressing some of these challenges?
Yeah, I do. So Happy Lawyer, Happy Life, the book, spun into a podcast and spun into a business. And so I now have a second business called Happy Lawyer, Happy Life, as trite and, crazy as that title might sound. But at the heart of that business is a membership of lawyers from all around Australia. And we have two kind New Zealand members as well, all of whom are running small law firms. We all hang out in the online space. We share resources, we share ideas, we share our challenges, we learn together. That has been such a game changer. Community is so powerful. And again, my space is small law. When you're in little firms and you don't have others around you, partners, etc., that you can go and share the load with, it's incredibly isolating. And so to be able to build your firm within a network of firms and share that load is of itself one of the most helpful things I think we can all do to address the loneliness, the fear, the worry, the stress that comes with the job, which of itself helps with the happiness piece.
Absolutely. Do you meet virtually or do you get together physically?
Both. So the membership itself runs virtually throughout the year, and then we have a signature event in November each year where we all come together for about 2 or 3 days down in Kingscliff in northern New South Wales, which
Wonderful.
is this beautiful sort of sleepy beach town, for a great event, like 3 days of business conferencing. But just again, it's that connection between people, and when you see people in real life that you've hung out with online for 12 months, it just makes it all so much better. And then that feeds into the next year of keeping everyone going. So it's been a really powerful community to build.
So any viewers or listeners today who might be feeling a little stressed, they presumably can go to your website, express interest in joining the community. Excellent.
Yeah, absolutely.
Are you predominantly focused on those practitioners who are working in small or mid-sized firms, or do you have any takers from the big firms?
I do actually. So within our community, I have colleagues who are in very much bigger firms than mine. Clayton Utes, for example. I've got a very good friend, Jennifer Harris, who practices out of Sydney. And she's been a part of the Happy Lawyer, Happy Life adventure since it began. And I always enjoy talking with Jen because I'm very conscious that, not having ever worked in big law, as we often call it, I'm very careful to comment on what that must be like or how one might change that. And I've so enjoyed the opportunity to build friendships with colleagues who are in that space and share our different experiences. What again I've come to learn is the issues are the same. They're just managed differently or created differently. Again, an advantage I perceive that small or boutique practices have is the ability to change quickly is easier when you've got less structure, less humans, all of these things. But the advantage that larger organizations tend to have over us is resourcing. And so I think both offer opportunities and challenges, but the issues are still very similar, no matter whether you're in a micro firm as a solopreneur or within a much more large organisation.
So tell me something. How do practitioners recognize in themselves that they actually might need not just community support, such as the community that you offer, but maybe something even more professional that can go to the very core of their issues? Is part of the problem self-recognition of the problem?
I think that's right. It is really hard when you're not feeling great to identify that you're not feeling great and you need some support. I have a view that we should actually, as professionals, be permanently engaged in a positive way with support. Now, whether it might be a psychologist, that might be a social worker counsellor, that might be a coach. That piece is so powerful. And if we think about our colleagues that do work in the social sciences, psychologists, etc., they have as part of their profession and part of their requirements to be a part of the profession reflective practice, where they're forever meeting with someone who is in essence a supervisor to talk through what's going on. And that person will be outside their organisation and it's just part of what they do. So I have a view that we almost need to flip the dialogue on the idea of seeking support as a thing I do when I'm in a challenge to a thing I do all the time, because this is the nature of the beast that I work in. We're working in really difficult areas of human life, particularly those of us in family law, wills and estates, these very human places where you see really confronting content, and it takes a toll. So I would start by saying, if we can, I think ideally we all should be engaging in some form of reflective practice and support always, and it should just be part of how we live. The way I self-identified that I was in not a great space was I just didn't want to go to work. It was sort of that simple. And when you own a business and you don't want to go to it, it's not a great thing. So if you're just genuinely feeling like something's not right, I don't know what it is, you don't need to be able to identify what it is. That for me is a moment to reach out. And I would absolutely advocate for professional support from those that know how to help us and creating the space.
Yeah. And for those who are watching us live at the moment, if perhaps you've got a question for Clarissa, feel free to use the Q&A box down there. And we don't often do it on Law Chat, but if somebody has got a burning question, you're happy to take it, Clarissa?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
No, that's great. It's interesting. You're kind enough to mention my first book, which, can you believe, was all of 23 years ago. And in that book, I highlighted the high levels of depression and suicide that impact on the profession. And as you may know, I've just published a new book called The Heart of Practice. Here it is, which only has come out in the last 3 weeks or so. And in it, I say, look, the more things that have changed in the profession, the more they've stayed the same. Having referred to those statistics that I mentioned in the year 2000 when I wrote that book, here we are in 2023. Now, in recent years, I've noted that there's been an acceleration of attention to this issue by the authorities, if I can call them that. And I quote the 2017 American Bar Association's National Task Force on Lawyer Wellbeing report, in which, and I'll read the quote to you because I'm interested in your thoughts on this. The legal profession is already struggling. Our profession confronts a dwindling market share as the public turns to more accessible, affordable, alternative legal service providers. We are at a crossroads. To maintain public confidence in the profession, to meet the need for innovation in how we deliver legal services, to increase access to justice, and to reduce the level of toxicity that has allowed mental health and substance use disorders to fester among our colleagues, we have to act now. Change will require a wide-eyed and candid assessment of our members' state of being, accompanied by courageous commitment to re-envisioning what it means to live the life of a lawyer. It sounds like you're very much doing the re-envisioning here, and that what you're suggesting is more than being reactive to the problem as and when it arises, but putting in place structures that are preemptive, if you like, and designed not to be the ambulance at the bottom of the cliff, but the fence at the top of it, if I can put it that way.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And, changing how we work. So a simple micro example, it's not micro, it's actually macro, but a micro example, how we communicate with each other as legal professionals is extraordinarily bad. just the type of language that can be used in correspondence, in emails, sometimes by phone, sometimes in person, this posturing, this aggressive way of communicating. Why do we do that? I spend my life asking the question, but why? But why? But why? I'm just a person that is forever going around everywhere saying, but why? Why is that necessary? Why did that become a thing? Why do we still do that? Does it have a purpose? You know, the stress that we cause each other. When I was doing my research for my book, one of the biggest stress for lawyers is other lawyers. That's crazy. Like, that's completely within our control. And so it's a leading by example thing. I think for those of us that have been in the industry for a period of time now, that are leading organizations, you need to have a simple way in your organization of saying, we actually just don't communicate like that. No matter what is coming at us, we're not doing that. That's not who we are. That's not how we're being. And if the top just starts leading in a different way, everything starts to fall into line, as we know. So simple micro examples. Communication 24/7 is, I think, the biggest problem in this moment right now. So the idea that I might be in a court hearing, which I often am online, which is great, offers all sorts of convenience for the world, but somehow there's an expectation that I'm on a Teams link doing a court hearing and I'm still checking my emails over here. That is massively problematic for how we think, for how we feel. And that's what leads to this anxiety-ridden way of living. So these, you know, the ways that people now can communicate so conveniently everywhere, all the time, is one of the biggest problems at the moment. And as a profession, I think, again, we need to start getting better at saying, do we really want this 24/7 style of lawyering? Do we want to change how that's working? I think we have to, if we are genuinely trying to build a profession that has at the heart of it the wellness of its participants, because no one can focus when they're doing six things. That's what leads to stress, errors, all of the worries, which over time becomes a big, big, big problem.
Yeah, it's interesting. As part of my research for the new book, I interviewed 10 lawyer leaders, legal professionals, be they lawyers or legal executives in law firms. And I think all of them, without exception, have devoted a great deal of time to becoming self-aware, to developing their own self-leadership capabilities. And, I think there was a comment there from one of the interviewees about the fact that, law school really doesn't educate us this well. We're almost sort of brainwashed with the idea of we're in an adversarial system. And therefore, I'm going to put this cloak of adversarialness, if I can call it that, and sort of, I'm going to leave my personality at the door, and I'm going to be aggressive and I'm going to be rude to my fellow professionals without being able to hover above the system and sort of say, look, these are the rules of the game, but as a courtesy to my fellow professionals, let's get this sorted. It's not about a boxing contest. It's about getting an outcome for our clients that's acceptable for all parties. Would you agree?
Absolutely, absolutely. There's, the space I'm in, divorce, these are people's lives. There is nothing more important than someone's children. But that doesn't mean that I need to be part of a boxing match, and I think that's a great analogy to achieve that. You can identify the challenges, you can identify the different opinions in something, knowing full well that I will never know the truth. I was not there. And someone's perception of truth is often entirely different to someone else's. We don't need to be there. We can be up here saying that's their perception, but with the tools we have, with what we know about the legal framework, how can we find a way forward for this family? That's my legal space. But that applies no matter the area of law that you're in.
So if I'm a practitioner watching this and I don't want to go to work, I become disillusioned with my work, perhaps I'm drinking too much or there's some other form of substance abuse, where do I start? Do I contact you? Do I contact the Law Society's wellness program?
Yeah. I think look, I would always say people are very welcome to contact me, but I'm not someone with professional training in how to take that person to that next place. So I think it's important to acknowledge that there are professionals that can help in those moments. Make the phone call and set up the time. And you've got nothing to lose. It's Clarissa's life motto. There's nothing bad that can come from that. You might go, oh, that didn't really help me through, or that wasn't the right person, but more often than not, just taking that first step is so powerful. I do like to believe that the book I wrote about this is a really helpful tool, and it takes you through 5 core areas that ultimately are designed to help you get back to what makes me happy. what has really worked for me is that piece of clarity around law is how I sort of do things. It's how I spend my time during the day, but it's not who I am. And who I am is Clarissa. And this is sort of the profession, or I describe it in my book as this is the music that sort of plays along. And I think that distinction is really, really important. So sometimes it's as simple as just pausing for a moment and saying, stop. What are the things that I enjoy doing? And I'm doing one of them today. And that doesn't need to be a climb the Eiffel Tower moment. Sometimes it's as simple as I'm taking the dog for a walk, because for the last 4 weeks, I haven't been able to do it because life is crazy. And I'm just doing that one thing today. And then that one thing happens tomorrow, and then it happens the next day. If you want to change how you feel, you have to change what you're doing and how you're thinking. So if you keep doing the same thing, Einstein very wisely told us, we'll just keep getting the same results. So you've got to shift your thinking or shift your doing. And I would just start in the micro, but I would absolutely say engage with professionals. That's what they're skilled at, and they're so powerful and helpful.
And you've just been for a swim before this interview.
Yeah. Yep.
I
So this
remember.
is, that's me.
I remember when the first book came out in 2000, one of the ideas in there was go for a midday massage, which raised eyebrows amongst practitioners, but it's de rigueur now, isn't it? Hey, look, quick question for you that's coming from Mark, a colleague friend of mine in Rotorua, who has his own practice. He's saying, Clarissa, what is the number one practice wellness lesson you have learned?
Only one, Mark. I think it's what I just said before. It's focus on you. That wonderful saying when you get on an aeroplane, fit your own mask first. It's that. See yourself, respect yourself, value yourself. What I see with many of the professionals that I work with is that they're second to their friends, their family, their business, all of the things, and their own wellness / particularly physical health is like last on the list. So I would say fit your own mask first. And if I was giving one happiness tip that flows out of that, it is health. And with lawyers, it's sleep. So if you did nothing else but focused on getting sleep, the proper amount, not this sort of 3 or 4 hours of broken sleep that most people tell me they can function with, they can't. That's the micro tip that just makes the world of difference in my experience.
There you go, Mark. I hope that helps. Sleep, very important, absolutely. Are you an optimist?
Yes,
and
completely, like Pollyanna.
Yeah, I think I can tell that. And are you optimistic about the future of the legal services industry and what it has to offer for the next generation who might be going into it?
Absolutely. I really am, Simon, and I am Pollyanna-ish, and I accept that, but I'd much prefer to live my life that way and be proved wrong than to be forever in the depths of despair and hoping that it'll change. I really do see such opportunity right now for legal professionals coming into the market, those of us in the market. The creativity that I've been able to engage in our business and how we generate revenue, create products, have tried to find ways to offer legal solutions to family members that just don't have the budget for what I call the Louis Vuitton legal service. I honestly do think that there are so many opportunities. Should we be doing business the same way we did 20 years ago? No. And I think that's the challenge. When you're in an organization that's got thousands of employees, it's deeply difficult to change that quickly. When you're Brisbane Family Law Centre with 10 employees, we can say on Monday, let's try this week. And by Friday, have it up, running, and have made a decision about whether it's useful to us or not. And then I call it the Marie Kondo moment, where we all pause and go, well, do we still need that? Is that still helpful? Does it serve a purpose? And if not, we get rid of it. So just that pace, I think that you can build in an organisation that is just a bit more nimble is really powerful. But no, I honestly do think that the profession is in a great place. We are smart people. We are talented people. But we do need to think differently. And that's something that lawyers can find confronting, is doing things differently. But we did it in COVID. Again, the profession shifted fast. So it's possible.
Yeah. And how do you make sure that you have a happy team? You might be flying high and doing well. How do you keep in touch with the morale and the things that are happening to your team?
Yeah. So you've got to be present. You've got to be present. You've got to be listening. You've got to be role modeling. So you've got to be living this behavior and letting them live it as well. It's all well and good me saying, I'll go swimming. And by the way, you must all be here for 12 hours a day so I can go swimming. That's not how it works here. So for me, it's creating a workplace where people are empowered, where they're comfortable, where they're able to explore whatever their life's journey is and use my business as their tool in that moment to help them do both. And then I get the best from them. I've come to accept that people coming to work with me are not going to work with me for the next 30 years. So if I can get a great return out of that team member for 2 or 3 or 4 or even 5 years, then that's success right now. And if they then head back out into the universe and take whatever they've learned with me and deploy that somewhere else, then I like to believe that's the pebble in the river moment where you're just expanding that knowledge of how to build a workplace that is vibrant and happy. Is it always like that? No, because things happen for people, for the business, all of those things. So it's being honest about that and saying, this is happening right now. This is really hard. We need to navigate this. I think, yeah, honesty, transparency, no hierarchy. That's really important in my business. There's no hierarchy. There's no, like, I'm a lawyer, you're a person who's not a lawyer, so I do this and you do that. It doesn't exist. It's like, this is the team, we're doing this, we're moving forward.
And as I mentioned in my introduction, you're also a mum. You have 2 daughters aged 10 and
5. Yeah.
10 and 5.
10 and 5.
So in terms of if there's any ball juggling to be done at the moment, who's picking them up from school today? Is that you, or how does that work?
No, we have a nanny. So the decision I made early on when I became a mum, and my husband works full time, was to have a nanny. So Karina, our nanny, she'll be sitting behind me at the moment. She helps. Before my youngest daughter started school this year, she was with my youngest daughter at home, but my youngest daughter's at school. Both kids are at school. So Karina comes and helps in the office during the day, and then she'll pick them up from school, get my eldest daughter to her dance events in the afternoon. And that's the choice that we've made in our family, is not to try and do it all, have support for different elements of what we're doing, and it makes our family work well.
And are the kids interested in a career in law?
I hope not, Simon. I'm a full-time dance mum when I'm not lawyering, and so I am actively pursuing children's interests in the performing arts, but I don't know. Who knows what they'll end up doing? Again, I suspect there'll be jobs available to my children that I can't even imagine what they are in this moment. I don't mind what they do as long as they are pursuing something that they enjoy and they're happy. And if it turns out to be law, then let's hope that some of the work I do now makes it an easier profession for them if that's what they choose.
Absolutely wonderful. Hey, well, look, I really love the colours that you've got on today, and thank you for sharing your background and your insights into wellness in this profession. I think it's obviously a very important topic and one that's of concern at a very personal level for many people. I've yet to read your book, Happy Lawyer, Happy Life, and I look forward to doing. And it's got a very bright cover on the front there.
My daughter painted that picture.
Well, very talented girl, I must say. So I look forward to reading that. Now, if people would also like to read it or to contact you, how can they do that? Yeah,
of course. So happylawyerhappylife.com website has the book and all of the bits and bobs, the podcast when it was running, etc., etc. If you email me, I probably will take about 4 weeks to email you back because I'm useless. So the easiest way to contact Clarissa is through Instagram. I'm very effective on Instagram Messenger, so you can find me over there. I'm the Happy Family Lawyer on Instagram. That's one of my favourite platforms.
Wonderful. And the November event in Kingscliff, which I remember well, sounds very tempting indeed. So,
yes.
Yeah, so those who want a little trip to northern New South Wales, and get in touch with Clarissa. But for now, our time is virtually up. So, Clarissa, thank you very much for joining us on Law Chat today. And I look forward to catching you in person at some stage soon. So,
yes.
All the best to you with all your good work, and all the best for the rest of this year.
Thank you so much, Simon.
Great pleasure. Bye-bye, everyone. We'll see you next month.